Thanks, Dean. My name is Deeti Makkar. I'm the Senior Program Manager for the Retrofit Accelerator program at Alberta Ecotrust. Alberta Ecotrust Foundation operates across Alberta, so we recognize the traditional territory of many diverse Indigenous peoples. This includes Treaty 6, 7, and 8 nations, the Blackfoot Confederacy comprising the Siksika, Kainai, and Piikani First Nations, the Cree, Dene, Nakota Sioux, Saulteaux, and the Métis Nation of Alberta. I'd like to start by giving a bit of an intro to Alberta Ecotrust. Alberta Ecotrust Foundation is a charity that leads and supports environmental and climate action projects in Alberta. We have two programs that support the building industry, ENBIX, which stands for Emissions Neutral Buildings Information Exchange, and Alberta Ecotrust Retrofit Accelerator. ENBIX is a collaborative initiative of Alberta Ecotrust that brings the building industry together to share knowledge, build capacity, and support building and renovation practices across Alberta. The goal of ENBIX is to reduce emissions from new and existing buildings across Alberta. We do this by hosting events, peer-to-peer learning, and communities of practice. The Alberta Ecotrust Retrofit Accelerator is a free coaching program designed to guide building owners and managers through sustainable building upgrades known as Deep Retrofits. These take a whole building approach to standard upgrades to reduce emissions, energy consumption, and operating costs. And we'd like to acknowledge that the Alberta Ecotrust Retrofit Accelerator program is funded by Natural Resources Canada under the Deep Retrofit Accelerator initiative, and it's also made possible by funding from RBC Foundation's Tech for Nature program. With that, I will pass it back to Dean.
You can see the ecosystem partners and collaborators as part of this project. City of Calgary, Alberta Energy Efficiency Alliance, City of Edmonton, Alberta Ecotrust themselves through ENBIX, and the Pembina Institute. So it's a large initiative. We'll give a bit of a introduction to our the Green Building Technology Access Center and our involvement in the project. So the Green Building Technology Access Center we're going on about 15 years or so. We were just discussing it the other day. Our mission has kind of evolved over the years, but the focus is to research, implement, and commercialize new building materials, systems, and methods that lead to the construction or retrofit of buildings to be higher efficiency, lower emission, healthier, and more environmentally friendly. To also collaboratively create and de-risk holistic high-performance building solutions to address environmental, social, and economic realities. To develop and provide training and support systems to upskill the residential and commercial construction industries. So like I said, the evolution, I've been a member at GBT for now over 10 years in 2 different stints, so 7 years and then now just over 3. And I'd like to key 2 words in there that kind of from the first stint to this next stint, retrofitting and providing training and developing training, I should say. Those are projects that we've really gotten into and terminology that has really grown. In my first stint in GBT, when we were just getting started, the focus was net zero buildings, net zero homes. And since this return in 2021, the word retrofit it's grown exponentially. And there's been, with all the funding initiatives focused towards it, it's impressive, and it's a really great initiative. And when we think of all the existing buildings that are out there that need improvements, when we talk about energy efficiency, the lowest hanging fruits is to optimize the buildings that we already have. And if this is like the lower hanging fruit that we can all focus on. So our main research themes, as you can see, one area, energy, the environment, building science. So my area previously was more focused on architectural ecology and water conservation. You can see our research lab here on the northwest corner at campus. There's a water lab in the basement there that we have a large rainwater cistern, and so offers some opportunities to really delve into some water conservation practices and what have you, and also disseminating that knowledge. Another big area that's growing is, you can see the picture on the bottom right, the wall library. That's evolving as well. It's now moved into the new sprung structure there, the white structure there. And we're really building that out as a really useful tool, both for industry and on campus here for the learning of our students. And a number of the programs offered here, the Architectural Technologies program, the Civil Engineering Technologies program, carpentry, what you name it. So our involvement in the DRE initiative, the Alberta Ecotrust, the discovery sessions are one aspect, and these are to educate participants about the importance of deep energy retrofits in addressing climate change and improving energy efficiency, identifying funding models as a topic today, incentives and financing mechanisms to reduce upfront costs, facilitate the exchange of information, networking, and best practices among the industry professionals, identify and address skills, the skill gaps in the industry and training and certification opportunities, identify and address technical challenges related to retrofitting of buildings while promoting the innovation and best practices. Finally, showcasing case studies of the successful deep energy retrofit projects to inspire and motivate. So we've devised 8 sessions. There'll be 3 in-person in Calgary, 3 in-person in Edmonton, and then 2 online sessions. In deciding the topics, we kind of honed in on financing being the first one, since from my experience, when anybody, even from the residential scale, okay, where's this money coming from? This is a very expensive endeavor. So hence the topic, or focusing on the financing topic for the first one. So other potential upcoming topics could be exploring the business case, for DERs from multiple stakeholder perspectives, from the consultants, from the trades, you know, what's in it for them type avenue. Also identifying risk and barriers from multiple stakeholder perspectives, identifying skills, training, and gaps, the technologies and solutions that may be shown through other case studies, also understanding the return on investment, and also being flexible, as this is a multi-year project. So as there's a lot of learnings going on between all these different stakeholders on this project, other topics might come up that might shed more importance. The other aspect of our GBTAC deliverables on this project is a market gap analysis. So this is where we will look at the training needs identification, learnings from other jurisdictions, financial needs assessment, code and regulatory impact analysis, risks and barriers to accelerating retrofit activity in the Alberta market. And through that, the expected outcomes, as you can see, identifying the skill building needed, accessible training, gaps and available training, identify the best practices and lesson learned that can be applied to Alberta's program, collection of data to quantify the needs for financial support and incentives, understanding the impact of support to create barriers, and identify potential opportunities for made in Alberta solutions. With that, feel free to connect with our team, our manager, research chair, Melanie Ross, our operations lead, Kelsey Chagas, who's also in attendance today, myself, Dean Jones, and our research associate, Pratchett. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to Deeti to go through the presentation.
Okay, so agenda for my portion of the session today. I'm going to give a brief introduction to retrofit, the difference between deep energy retrofits, we're calling them, and general retrofits, talking about deep energy project financing. What are the key decision drivers behind deciding which financing opportunity you want to go after? Who are the key stakeholders and what are their motivations? Some traditional financing methods and drawbacks, and then looking into some more innovative DER financing products. So I'll give a brief overview of what we're seeing out there and then give a little bit more of a detailed look at Efficiency Capital and SOFIAC products. And then I'll conclude and we'll have a bit of a presentation from, you're both from Efficiency Capital and SOFIAC, and then dive into a panel discussion and chat about the Avenue Living case study. And in there at some point is a break. Okay, so introduction to retrofits. So retrofitting involves upgrading your existing, in this case, commercial buildings to improve the energy efficiency, reduce carbon emissions, and enhance your overall building performance. And so this can get you a whole bunch of benefits, including extending your building lifespan, reducing environmental footprint and enhancing the occupancy comfort and productivity. Retrofitting has evolved from simple upgrades to more sophisticated systems that integrate smart technologies. And so early retrofitting might have looked like, finding opportunities that give you the lowest payback period, potentially looking at things like LED upgrades across your entire portfolio, looking at upgrading one component when it fails. But the evolution over time is looking at incorporating advanced technologies and also looking at your building more holistically, and seeing what opportunities that can get you. So some common measures for retrofits, you can see HVAC system upgrades, lighting replacements, basic insulation improvements, window replacements. A lot of times, these are funded either through direct capital investment, bank loans, or utility rebates and incentives. While effective, these often require significant upfront capital and may not fully capitalize on the energy savings you can achieve in the building. I'm going to touch briefly on these traditional funding methods. Traditional contracting. So this approach often relies on a design, bid, build, or design, build model. Contractors bid on projects, and the lowest cost bidder typically wins the contract. And so this focuses on the lowest cost. The emphasis on the lowest cost often leads to the selection of solutions that may be less energy efficient or sustainable in the long term. And so when you're neglecting this long-term value, decisions are driven purely by upfront price, and they can often overlook key factors like operational cost savings, energy efficiency, or the building's environmental footprint. And so you'll see this kind of financing method be common in public sector projects where budget constraints will dominate the decision-making process. You'll also see direct capital investment. So this involves the building owner organization funding the retrofit project entirely from their own capital, reserves, or equity. And so the challenges with this one is that it's a high financial burden. This method ties up significant capital that could be otherwise used for core business activities or investments. And there's also a high risk exposure. So owners bear all the financial risks of the projects, including the potential cost for overruns, and also the underperformance of energy savings as well. While this method allows for full ownership of the improvements, it may not be feasible for many organizations, especially those with limited liquidity. And so those folks may look towards bank loans. And this is a common financing option where building owners secure loans to fund their retrofit projects, and it's repaid over a fixed term with interest. The challenges with this is that you get limited flexibility. So repayment schedules are rigid, and regardless of the building's cash flow or the actual energy savings achieved, you're always having to pay that fixed amount. There's also interest costs involved. So that adds financial strain, particularly for projects with longer payback periods or lower initial returns. And so while this is accessible, this method doesn't account for the unique cash flow dynamics of energy retrofit projects. And you'll also have some utility rebates and incentives. So that's partial funding that's often offered by governments or utility companies to promote energy efficiency measures. And these programs rarely will cover the full cost of the project, leaving owners to secure additional funding to close the gap. And they're often quite complex in navigating the application process. I'm sure a lot of folks in this room have supported clients in trying to access it, and it can be time consuming and oftentimes very bureaucratic. And that can lead to delays in the actual project implementation. So talking about a deep energy retrofit, as I'd mentioned before, this is a more comprehensive and holistic way to tackle reducing the carbon emissions in your building. And so these projects often utilize advanced technologies, and there's a long-term focus on the energy performance and resilience of the buildings. So deep energy retrofits. Sorry, I missed a slide there. So how DER differs from general retrofits. The scope here, general retrofits are often limited to specific areas that you're wanting to tackle in your building, and DERs are more holistic. So the investment required for general retrofits are often lower capital, and DERs are a higher initial investment, but they oftentimes offer greater returns. And so with general retrofits, they're moderate energy savings. DER, you're hoping to tackle those more substantial energy savings. So I've kind of touched on all of these. The benefits are energy savings, cost efficiency, sustainability. You could also target some market competitiveness. So you can enhance your property value and attractiveness by tackling deep energy retrofits and also improve the well-being of your occupants. For deep energy retrofit project financing, I'm going to talk about some of the key decision drivers, stakeholders and their motivations, and then talk about some traditional innovative financing models. Okay, so some key decision drivers. There's a few common financial metrics that are evaluated as part of a retrofit project. You're going to hear me talk about a few, and for some of you, this may be quite common knowledge, but return on investment. So that measures the profitability of the retrofit by comparing the net benefits to the initial costs. Having a good ROI ensures that the retrofit will generate sufficient financial returns over time. You could also look at the net present value. So that calculates the difference between the present value of cash inflows and outflows over the project's lifespan. This helps to determine the financial viability and long-term profitability of the retrofit. Payback period is a key one that represents the time it takes to recover the initial investment through savings and benefits. And shorter payback periods are generally more attractive, so they reduce financial risk. You also have your operational cost savings. So these are a reduction in energy bills, maintenance costs, and other operational expenses due to improved efficiency. And this can enhance the building's profitability and reduce ongoing expenses. And you also have access to incentives and rebates. So that's dependent on the availability of government grants, tax credits, and utility rebates for energy efficient upgrades. Another item you might want to consider is the impact of property value and marketability. So enhancements from retrofitting can lead to higher market valuations, which boosts the asset's worth, making it more attractive for future sales or refinancing. Retrofitted buildings often command higher sale prices due to improved features, and so this can maximize returns upon sale and often shortens the time on market. Energy efficient and modern buildings stand out in the real estate market, so this creates market competitiveness and attracts you quality tenants. When it comes to current and future regulations, ensuring compliance with existing building codes and anticipating future regulatory changes can avoid potential fines, ensures uninterrupted operations, and reduce the costs of future upgrades. Adhering to carbon pricing mechanisms and emissions reduction targets mitigate financial risks associated with environmental policies. When considering deep energy retrofits, there are some tenant impacts to consider as well. Improved indoor environmental quality can be achieved through enhancements to lighting, air quality, temperature control, and acoustics. And this creates a comfortable and healthy environment, leading to higher tenant satisfaction and retention rate. Modern amenities such as smart building systems, advanced HVAC, and energy efficient lighting increase the building's attractiveness and meet the evolving needs of tenants. Minimizing downtime and disruptions during the retrofit process maintains tenant satisfaction and reduces the risk of tenant turnover during renovations. There's also the obvious environmental impact of undergoing DERs, and that's that reduction in energy consumption, greenhouse gas emissions, and overall environmental footprint. This aligns with global sustainability trends and demonstrates commitment to environmental stewardship. Beyond that, there could be integration of retrofit projects into broader ESG strategies, which enhance the building's attractiveness to ESG-focused investors and stakeholders. Achieving green certifications like LEED, BREEAM, or ENERGY STAR through retrofitting can provide third-party validation of sustainability efforts, boosting your market reputation. Another key decision driver is long-term value creation. And so the term lifecycle cost analysis describes evaluating the total cost of ownership, including installation, maintenance, operational costs over the building's lifespan. And considering lifecycle costs ensures that retrofits provide sustainable long-term benefits and don't incur any hidden costs. Another concept to consider is resilience and adaptability. enhancing the building's ability to adapt to future technological advancements and changing market demands. This increases the building's longevity and relevance in a dynamic market environment. And we should also be considering technological upgrades, so incorporating smart building technologies, IoT devices, and renewable energy systems can improve building performance, operational efficiency, and provides a foundation for future innovations. Risk management is a key decision driver for energy retrofitting. For example, there's energy price volatility. So fluctuations in energy costs affect operational expenses. Energy efficient buildings are less susceptible to price volatility, providing more predictable costs. There may be financing and funding risks involved to consider. So the availability and terms of financing options for retrofit projects can impact projects' viability. And securing favorable financing reduces financial strain and ensures project viability. There may also be risks during the project implementation itself, such as delays or cost overruns. So effective project management and contingency planning mitigates these risks. Oftentimes, depending on the occupancy of the building, implementation is a key driver for retrofit decision-making. So planning the retrofit to align with business operations and minimizing disruptions ensures smooth execution and maintains business continuity. Selecting experienced and reputable contractors for retrofit projects guarantees quality workmanship and adherence to project specifications. And also designing retrofit solutions that can be scaled or adapted as needed allows for future modifications and expansions without significant additional costs. There are often many stakeholders involved in the decision-making process. Incorporating the needs and preferences of current and prospective tenants enhances tenant satisfaction and ensures the retrofits meet user requirements. Aligning retrofit projects with investor and shareholder priorities such as sustainability and profitability secures investor support and potentially attracts new investments as well. It's also important to consider the impact of retrofits on the surrounding community, such as reduced emissions and noise. These outcomes can build positive community relations and enhance the building's reputation locally. We touched previously on smart building integration, so implementing IoT and automation technologies for better building management enhances operational efficiency and provides data-driven insights for further improvements. Renewable energy adoption of energy sources like solar panels or geothermal systems reduce reliance on non-renewable energy. It lowers utility costs and support sustainability goals. And the use of advanced building materials that improve insulation, durability, and energy efficiency enhance building performance and reduces long-term maintenance needs. Understanding the ongoing maintenance needs for new systems and technologies installed during the retrofit ensures long-term functionality and prevents unexpected costs. Providing training for building management and maintenance staff on these new systems maximizes the effectiveness of retrofit investments and ensures proper system utilization. It's also important to consider warranty and support for retrofit projects. So securing these types of agreements for retrofit components protects against defects and ensures reliable performance of retrofit installations. And lastly, I touched on this earlier, but there's also an environmental and social impact. So looking at community health and well-being. So improving your indoor air quality within the building promotes a healthier environment for occupants, leading to increased productivity and satisfaction. And there's also an opportunity to contribute to local sustainability goals by aligning your retrofit projects with Alberta's or local municipalities' sustainability targets. Some of the key considerations beyond financing. So if you have a detailed energy model and projections, these establish a detailed baseline of current energy usage to accurately project your savings. You can look at modeling different scenarios, for example, varying your levels of investment to compare outcomes and optimize your decision making. Having a look at the different financing strategies, so you can explore various financing mechanisms such as green loans, energy performance contracts, or leasing models, and assess the impact of different financing options on the overall cost and return of your retrofit project. Financing is particularly complex when addressing long payback measures like heat pumps and windows. So considers capital stacking options, combining various financing options alongside innovative financing structures and models. It's also important to evaluate how retrofitting might affect your current tenants, including potential benefits like lower utility costs or improved comfort, and considering how retrofitting aligns with the interests of investors focused on sustainability and long-term value. Extending the analysis to cover the entire life cycle or retrofitted components, including replacement or upgrade cycles. So going above and beyond just the date you've implemented a project. Incorporate broader sustainability metrics such as water use reduction, waste management improvements, and overall environmental impact. Providing detailed information on specific Alberta provincial programs, grants, or tax incentives that are available for retrofitting projects is something that Alberta Ecotrust is here to support with. And that's something that can allow you to figure out what your roadmap looks like for your building to allow you to meet current and anticipated regulatory requirements. And also compare your retrofit proposal against industry benchmarks or similar projects in Alberta to contextualize the benefits and costs, elaborating on how retrofitting can provide a competitive edge in attracting tenants or buyers compared to non-retrofitted buildings. There's ESG integration, so highlighting how retrofitting contributes to ESG goals and can enhance reporting for sustainability-focused investors. Assess the broader community benefits, such as reduced local emissions and contribution to Alberta's sustainability. And then also considering the impact of emerging technologies, so smart building systems, renewable energy integration on the retrofit's effectiveness and future-proofing. Ensure the retrofit solutions are scalable and flexible to accommodate future technological advancements or changes in building use. And then having a detailed timeline and project management plan. So providing more granular timeline for each phase of the project, key milestones, critical path activities, and detail the resources required, including personnel, equipment, subcontractors to ensure smooth execution. And lastly, you might want to look at case studies or success stories of similar retrofitting projects in Alberta to illustrate potential outcomes and lessons learned, and showcase actual performance improvements and financial returns from these case studies to build credibility. So we'll hear one such example today, and there's lots more of these resources available through ENBIX. So quickly highlighting some of the key stakeholders and motivations. You have building owners. Understanding this can vary quite a bit depending on the organization and how many layers there are within your team. But the motivations can look like cost savings, property value, regulatory compliance, sustainability. Sometimes these can be all objectives of one person, or it can be a team of different individuals. You have tenants whose motivations are, is the space comfortable? Am I paying lower utility costs? Does it align with my sustainability motivations? And then you have investors who look mostly at, is it an attractive ROI? Is this asset appreciating overall? And does it comply with any ESG targets we have? Financiers have their motivations of ensuring it's a secure investment that they're investing in. They're looking at potential for long-term partnerships, so beyond just the single project, and looking for opportunities to showcase innovative financing opportunities. And then you have regulators whose motivations are achieving GHG reduction, promoting energy efficiency, and enforcing compliance for those that are the laggards of the industry. So some of the traditional financing and drawbacks, bank loans, they're widely available. They provide a straightforward financing mechanism for retrofits, but they have that structured repayment. So fixed terms and repayment schedules offer product predictability for borrowers, but with that comes high interest rates. So that increases the overall project expense. There's often rigid terms, fixed repayment schedules, lack flexibility, and that makes it difficult to align repayments with your actual energy savings or cash flow variance over time. There's also collateral requirements in some cases, and so that increases the financial risk for the borrower. So while bank loans remain a common option, their limitations, particularly in cash flow flexibility, make them less suitable for the large-scale DER projects. You then have equity financing. So there's no repayment obligation since financing comes from equity investors. There's no immediate repayment required. That eases financial pressure. But there is the dilution of ownership. So equity financing often involves giving up a portion of your ownership, which may not be appealing to some building owners. And then there's the sense of loss of control. So they may demand influence over decisions, potentially conflicting with the owner's vision for the project. So while equity financing removes debt burden, it can be unattractive for businesses that prioritize maintaining full ownership and control over their assets. There's then utility rebates and incentives. So these offer partial funding so they can reduce the project costs and encourage energy efficient practices. And there's also, though, the limited availability, especially in the jurisdiction. Rebates and incentives are often capped or restricted or not even available. And when they are there, there's often that complexity for the application process itself. So that can be time intensive and often delay the project implementation. And oftentimes there's insufficient coverage. So they may only fund a portion of the project, and that requires the building owner to go out and find funds for the remaining. So they're an excellent supplementary funding source, but are insufficient as a standalone financing opportunity. And then we have EPCs. So these are great because there's no upfront cost. Contractors assume the initial financial burden, which is paid back through the energy savings over time. And they're performance-based, so they incentivize contractors to deliver results since the payments are tied to energy savings that are actually achieved. These, however, can be complex in the way that the agreements are set up. They can be lengthy, detailed, and oftentimes require a bit of expertise to navigate those agreements. And then there is that reliance on contractor performance. So the project success really depends on that contractor meeting their energy savings targets. And that introduces some performance risk. So they're effective for some projects, but may not align with all building owner preferences, particularly if there's concerns about the contractor's reliability or control over the project. So in a nutshell, traditional financing have high upfront costs, limited flexibility, concerns about risk allocation, oftentimes inadequate coverage, and some complexities in navigating these. And so going through all of this, you can see that sometimes there's a need for some more innovative financing options. And they can bridge the gap that's left by traditional methods by enabling more widespread DER implementation. And you'll see that some of these address that initial high upfront cost to provide flexible repayment options and to share risk between the various parties involved. Okay, so I'm going to go quickly through some of these options. Not everything that's out there, but I'll give a brief high-level overview of these. So we have green bonds, which are debt instruments specifically allocated for financing projects that deliver environmental benefits. So these are attractive to investors focused on ESG outcomes. So for example, you have your large scale commercial retrofits that significantly reduce GHG emissions. That's going to be a good option. You have the energy as a service model. So that eliminates the client's upfront investment by having the service provider own and maintain the equipment. And so while this is appealing, long-term contracts, 20 to 30 years, can create rigidity, particularly in a rapidly evolving energy landscape. And so similar to EPCs, triple net lease agreements can complicate ES implementation, which highlights the need to align landlord and tenant incentives for energy efficient upgrades. You also have your PACE, property assessed clean energy and on-bill financing. So these models aim to incentivize retrofits by tying your repayments either to your property taxes in the case of PACE or to utility bills. And despite their potential, adoption in Canada remains low, potentially due to the implementation complexities, limited awareness, and some administrative hurdles involved in these. There's public-private partnerships. So while traditionally used for new construction, PPPs offer a potential avenue for large-scale retrofits. There was a BC Housing single-room occupancy project that demonstrates this. Integrating energy efficiency as a core element in PPP contracts rather than treating it as an afterthought is crucial for maximizing the model's impact on building performance and reducing reliance on public funding. Before I skip to the next one, I'll quickly touch on some of these key features for these types of financing products. So you have your flexible repayment terms. Repayment schedules can be tied to energy savings or cash flow, which ensures financial feasibility for building owners. And when repayments are based on these measured savings, they reduce financial strain, especially during the early phases of implementation. Financial risks such as underperformance of energy savings are shared between stakeholders. So your building owners, contractors, financiers. For example, in the case of energy performance contracts where contractors guarantee energy savings. Many models integrate with government or utility incentives such as rebates, grants, or carbon credit opportunities. So you can leverage PACE financing alongside utility rebates to further reduce your project costs. And there are tailored solutions that ensure projects of all scales, from small retrofits to large deep energy retrofit initiatives, secure adequate funding. So there's on-bill financing for small projects, for example, and PPPs for large, complex public infrastructure projects. And with that, I'll go into a little bit of detail about some of these financing opportunities by Efficiency Capital and SOFIAC. So first, Efficiency Capital is in a unique position as Canada's first energy as a service company. They have 3 core financial products: Energy Savings Performance Agreement, I'll call it ESPA for short. You can correct me if I'm wrong there. Beata Energy Upgrade Agreement, and the Energy as a Service. So Efficiency Capital primarily targets their services towards nonprofits and condominiums, as these types of organizations often lack the internal capacity and capital to undertake energy retrofit projects. And they focus on a comprehensive solution. So project management, technical expertise, and access to various funding sources, being that one-stop shop, essentially. So the first product, the ESPA, this model functions as a guaranteed savings approach where building owners repay Efficiency Capital exclusively from a portion of the realized utility savings. For this, an ASHRAE Level 3 energy audit is mandatory to establish a baseline and accurate project savings. Payments from the building owner directly correspond to utility savings outlined in the audit, which ensures revenue neutrality through the agreement. And savings are guaranteed for the first 5 years and backed by an insurance policy held by the engineering firm. This approach is most suitable for clients facing capital and operational expenditure constraints, particularly those in the social and nonprofit sectors. There's then the Energy Upgrade Agreement. So this operates as a pay-for-performance model. While savings are certified, repayment to Efficiency Capital is fixed, resembling a lease-to-own structure. An ASHRAE Level 2 energy audit is a minimum requirement, with a 3 being preferable. The project scope considers the building owner's goals, even if the cost exceeds project savings. And de-risking occurs through project certification, especially for projects that achieve over 30% GHG reductions. So this one's ideal for condos and commercial real estate, where asset management and investor returns are key. And then there's the Energy as a Service. So this is similarly structured to a private power purchase agreement, which is commonly used in the solar industry. It's suitable for single or multiple measures with clients paying per unit, for example, per lumen for lighting. And this is best suited for clients requiring guaranteed uptime, such as manufacturers, hospitals, and airports. So some of the key advantages here is the equity investment. So providing up to 100% capital. So that frees up the building owner's resources. There's off-balance sheet solutions, minimizing the impact on debt covenants and borrowing capacity, which is a significant advantage, especially for nonprofits and condos. Cash flow management. So this allows you to optimize your cash flow, like through strategies like leveraging the full GST rebate and spreading payments over time. Risk mitigation, so assuming financial performance and technical risks, providing building owners with peace of mind. There's alignment with CIB, offering favorable rates for deep energy retrofits, and shared savings, so implementing ESPAs that allow building owners to share in the realized savings. SOFIAC financing. So SOFIAC has one model that aims to simplify and de-risk building retrofits for clients. The key features here are that SOFIAC finances the initial business case assessment at no cost to the client. And if the project proceeds, they utilize a pre-approved list of technical partners, which provides a simplification in the contractor selection process. They cover the costs of the investment grade audit and construction, and the client receives full ownership of the retrofitted assets upon project completion. Repayment for this one is based on shared savings model with monthly performance monitoring throughout the contract duration. So this is measured by an independent third party. If there's no savings, the client pays nothing. If the project overperforms, the shared savings ratio shifts in favor of the client. There's some carbon tax benefits here, so the client retains and can monetize carbon tax savings. The debt treatment here is unique, so the SOFIAC model is structured to avoid impacting the client's debt service coverage ratio. SOFIAC borrows the money, but the client signs a service agreement, not a loan agreement, and this repayment is contingent on actual savings. The asset is treated as a conditional debt with no value unless savings are achieved. So the advantages here are reduced financial barriers. So by eliminating your upfront costs and debt impact, SOFIAC can make large-scale retrofits accessible to a wider range of clients. There's simplified decision-making. The outcome-based model simplifies the decision-making, no upfront investment required, and then a guaranteed financial return if savings are realized. And so that value proposition becomes more compelling. Then there's also a focus on outcomes. So by aligning incentives around actual energy savings, SOFIAC promotes a focus on outcomes rather than just project delivery. There's also an alignment with sustainability goals. So this model's emphasis on deep energy retrofits and GHG reduction aligns with growing demands for sustainable building practices and supports organizations in meeting their targets. And with that, I just wanted to conclude. So as a summary, retrofits, they're essential for modernizing building. This deep energy retrofits, by looking holistically at your building, offers you opportunities for more comprehensive energy savings and long-term benefits. And there's some innovative financing methods that can aid in that process. We're seeing an increased adoption of deep energy retrofits, and so there's a need for more innovative financing products. Some suggestions for building owners: explore your financing options. So building owners should evaluate innovative financing structures to support DER initiatives. You could do that by talking to an Alberta Ecotrust Retrofit Accelerator coach. Our coaches are here to help building owners in this daunting journey. It can seem daunting at times, but we're doing the work to kind of aggregate all of the opportunities that are out there and help building owners understand what's the best option for their particular business needs. Engage with financiers, so collaborate with providers like Efficiency Capital and SOFIAC to find your suitable financing options, and invest in sustainability to future-proof your properties and enhance their value. Now with that, I would like to introduce Beata Domanska from Efficiency Capital. I'll have her speak first, then we'll pass it over to Stuart.
So hello, everybody. So for my presentation, I thought I would talk about a project that actually we're collaborating on with Alberta Ecotrust. So in the context of what we provide and kind of highlight what that means in the context of this particular project. I guess just to add that Efficiency Capital was born out of a nonprofit, which is the Atmospheric Fund, which is Alberta Ecotrust's sister organization, actually the first organization in Canada of this kind. So we're actually often mistaken for a nonprofit for that reason. So yeah, thank you to Alberta Ecotrust for inviting us here. So in terms of the client that I'm going to speak about, as I said, it's Alberta Ecotrust that introduced us. And this apartment building, it's a two building apartment building, is located in Edmonton, Alberta. And this particular client is a new owner. They purchased this building last year. And like many building owners, especially in Alberta, are taking advantage of the MLI Select program through CMHC. So they had a number of pieces of equipment at end of life. And because they were a new owner, fairly limited reserves to address all of the upgrades that needed to be done in the building. So their goals for the project were to address all of these end of life measures, but also to generate some modest savings to meet their obligation to CMHC under the MLI Select program. Their other goals for the project were also to limit the impact on their reserves or on their cash, and limit the negative cash outflows. So we're able to enter into up to 25-year contract arrangements. In this particular case, this building owner entered into a 20-year term. And we invested 100% of the capital required, excuse me, for the project. And as well, because we work closely with the building owner, we basically were kind of like their, back end partner throughout this entire project. We had applied for all of the incentives, as well as the tax credits that will ultimately flow to them for this project. And of course, this has no impact on their on their financials or their borrowing capacity or bandwidth. So this is a picture of the building, or one part of the building. It's kind of a typical building model that's common here in Alberta. We don't have these in Ontario. Roughly 20 years old, with a total of 163 units in 2 buildings. Total of almost 22,000 square meters. So as I mentioned, it's a 20-year agreement. It is a $2.3 million project with annual greenhouse gas emission reductions of 289 tons. And this project is literally, as we speak, getting the last few screws in a solar PV installation, and some last minute building automation system tune-ups, and probably should be completed by tomorrow. And SPG, who's working on this project with us, is represented in the room. So their goals, because they didn't want to really have a lot of negative outflow in terms of their cash, they were quite, I would say, modest as far as a deep energy retrofit is concerned. So we did do a comprehensive retrofit, but with 30% greenhouse gas emission reductions, we would consider that to be a modest deep energy retrofit. I chose this again because it's Alberta Ecotrust project. So what we looked at was variable frequency drives for their pumps and their motors, a heating fluid additive that I'm not sure how it works. It's magical, and it makes the boilers more efficient, as well as upgrading their domestic hot water heaters to condensing from atmospheric. We did a roof insulation, so the insulation had been quite limited, and so we put in great big mounds of insulation. It's a truss roof, so that was easy access. A 200 and roughly 290 megawatt solar PV installation, which is, as I mentioned, being finished right now. We were also able to do roof shingles for them. So you don't typically consider roof shingles as something that's going to generate any energy savings. But because of our flexible approach, we were able to do that in order to facilitate the solar PV. So one of the things that we can do is, address certain requirements or things that are at end of life, or maybe upgrades, like an electrical panel to accommodate a heat pump installation. As long as it facilitates some sort of energy saving mechanism, or in this case, solar renewable, then we can include that as well. We also replaced their their washers and dryers, Energy Star models. The washing machines were incredible water hogs, and I know that this is going to be more and more of an issue in Alberta, well, Calgary for sure, and certainly in Edmonton. And one of the magical things about water, for anybody who, probably many of you in this room know that, but water is magical. I've had projects that actually materialized because of low flow toilets. We love toilets. So, not to be overlooked when we're talking about deep energy retrofits. People tend to associate that with, energy, or with hydro or electricity and gas. Really need to always take a look at the water situation. So along those lines, we added low flow fixtures in the bathrooms and kitchens. And then a building automation system that's attached to all of the key HVAC, as well, I think, as the HVAC optimization, which is an AI with predictive capability. So once the building automation system is running for a while, the optimization software will be able to adjust for occupancy and so on. And I'm going to turn it over to Stuart. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm not going to stand on the corner of the room because I do like dirty dancing. I'm going to talk to you about SOFIAC. So you did a fantastic job telling everybody what it was, which is because we helped with the slides. And actually, Beata, I remember the low flow showers and all of that lot were great until they went and installed a low flow shower in my house. And it was like, I'm not getting wet anymore, but fantastic. Oh, I got a microphone. Oh, was I not loud enough? I've never been criticized of not being loud enough, but I guess it's for the recording. Sorry. Okay, so what do we do? Very basically, we pay for everything. The client owns everything. And if there are no savings, they pay us nothing. So we only take a portion of the shared savings. So that's how we work our models. I'm not going to give you death by PowerPoint or anything like that, but I was asked just to emphasize some of the points that were already mentioned about our program. We're also under the Canada Infrastructure Bank. And we also work very closely with Efficiency Capital. We're sort of cooperators, what is it? Or I don't know. We're sort of not competition, but we do work together. So there's a bit of an overlap in the middle markets, but mostly the smaller market, fantastic. They fill that very well. We tend to go on some of the higher ones. Our minimum requirement of a project size is 3 million. Which means that could be we're doing Good Life Fitness or whatever, and it could be 80 to 150,000 per building, but you put 400 buildings together, that's a shitload of buildings, and it adds up to over 3 million. So that's good for us. We're also working very closely with Alberta Ecotrust. We don't have a project at the moment that's up and running, unlike Efficiency Capital. We're working on our first. I'll mention it. What the hell? Calgary Co-op. I hope I haven't just killed that one from bad luck. You're not Calgary Co-op. Oh, no, sorry. Calgary Co-op. And so we are receivers of the DRE money, so the Deep Retrofit Accelerator initiative money that came out of ENICAN. So is Alberta Ecotrust. But they get 100 cents on the dollar. We get 75 cents on the dollar because we're for-profit, they're non-profit. So we work very closely. We use their money first if we can, which benefits the client. So that's what we're doing at the moment is how do we cooperate and get the upfront feasibility studies, which normally comes out of our equity. But if I can get that for free, it means I can put more money into the client's project because I'm not a charity. I'm going to take anything I'm putting up front into that project. I'm going to actually build it into the project and over the next 15 years. But if I get it free, I can put more in. So that's great. I have a question, though, for the audience. You've been sat here very patiently. How many people here are building owners? Oh, a couple. That's good. Well, and somebody not quite sure. Half. And advisors. How many here are advisors? Engineers? Okay. Don't think we missed. And so that means the last few people you were just walking past, saw the coffee and a bit of fruit, and then got stuck here and don't want to leave now in case it's too embarrassing. Okay, well, so we'll gear up what that looks like then on some of this. So some of our projects, I have to mention, we started off in Quebec. So our projects were launched in 2021 and we incubated for the first year in Quebec. We took the first 500 million out of Canada Infrastructure Bank whilst they were still trying to organize all their shit. And we said, quick, give us this money. We'll go and spend it for you. We'll be the aggregator. So we were actually the first aggregator under the Canada Infrastructure Bank and the largest. You're welcome. No, sorry. So, but on that, there's only actually two real aggregators under the CIB. These guys and us. The others are either owners that have actually gone up for their own money, or an ESCO, or their specific projects. So when you actually look at an aggregator is about, I've taken this money from the CIB and I'm trying to make it easy to access for owners, for engineering firms that have owners that they want to work for, have projects that they want to deliver, and don't want to do it bit by bit over the next 20 years. You want to get a project, back to what was being said earlier about how do we aggregate a project to get the best bang for the buck for the client. And that means doing a whole building or a whole portfolio of buildings in one go. And that's what we do. So on here, you'll see a bunch of French projects. My accent, they won't let me near Quebec. Our head office is in Quebec. I don't speak French, so I do everything else that's non-Quebec. But the first ones that are actually up and running were colleges and things that actually took place in Quebec. We launched Rest of Canada in 2022, July 4th, and since then we're about 300 million pipeline. So it is pretty much the most successful. So we're doing something right. SOFIAC 2 will launch next July. What's not on here is Calgary Airport. So Calgary Airport at the moment is one of the biggest. It's not private sector because you do have the University of Toronto, which is a 150 singular project, but under the innovative financial models, it's one of the biggest projects that's ever gone forward, and it's about 110 million. Calgary Airport, self-funded through the energy savings and approaching 50% GHG reduction. So it's taken since last February. It is public sector, so we took care of the procurement and we procured a $100 million project in 6 weeks. So public sector wouldn't do that. And yet the public sector, the airport, was very heavily involved in that procurement. But that's the kind of initiative that we both can bring to the table. We operate across all those three, but we also do public sector. We just don't very well advertise it because I've seen tectonic plates move faster. So it's not that we don't like doing public sector. Well, actually, no, we don't like doing public sector. No. It's not that we don't want to do public sector. We just rather they moved a little bit quicker. So these are the ones that have come through the hopper. Anybody that's spoken to there's nobody from the city of Calgary here, are they today? Oh, thank God for that. Yeah, so if you know what's happening in the city of Calgary at the moment, I think they're on about their third or fourth round of consultation. I'm sure you guys have all been in there as well. So what other projects have we done? So we're doing Calgary Airport, but we're already further advanced on Montreal Airport. It's a smaller project. It's about $25 million. Again, all of these projects are self-financed. In hotels is another Alberta project. And I do need to speak to you about that soon. In hotels, there's about 13 or 14 hotels that are spread around Alberta. They have some absolute high demands where they had failing systems. And so basically we advanced the money to make sure they stayed up and running on a couple of their buildings, whilst we're still doing the rest of the investment grade audit and developing the project together. Our partner on that one is Johnson Controls. Actually, so is Montreal Airport, I think. RA Centre is a giant leisure centre in Ottawa. The way that one worked, I'm not going to go through all of these, by the way, don't worry. I just want to pick a couple out. But the RA Centre was fairly unique because that was actually a client that was in distress. So they had a whole bunch of grant money to the tune of about $1 million. They appointed Siemens to do the project, and they spent the first $1 million. But they still have $4 million worth of work to go. Siemens very kindly continued to work, but then started to get a bit nervous. So the client put in another 400,000, and then they ran out of money. And then Siemens ran out of patience. So we were asked to come in. We bought that project out. So we paid everybody off the first $1.5 million. We actually gave back the client 400,000. And then we paid for the next 2 phases on the project. So the whole project was just because we just happened to be able to come in there and buy the whole thing out. And then we canceled the existing Siemens contract, and then they got our contract. And they cried a bit, and now they're happy with it. And Siemens is actually doing Calgary Airport. So the contracts we put in place don't just protect us and our lenders, they actually protect our clients because they're way more stringent. One of the points I was going to make actually about the energy performance contracts before, they're not that simple. The energy performance contracts that would exist when somebody like Johnson Controls or Siemens comes to a client and gives it to them, it favors them. It's their client. It's their contract. So when a client actually takes that contract, it's like, oh, well, this seems fairly simple. But the biggest risk a client has is in the baselining and the measurement and performance. So a bunch of those contracts that were listed up there, if you're not an educated client or you don't have good engineering advisors, sorry, I'm pointing to you saying you are good, you're not terrible. So you have good engineering advisors on that, you are at risk And actually, that was the case at the RA Centre. We do everything. There is nothing we can't touch. Our smallest project at the moment is a condo block in Toronto, and it's about 3.2 million. Biggest being the Calgary airport. We do ports, we do schools, we do colleges, hospitals. We haven't actually done a hospital yet, but we keep getting danced around by the public sector. But we do multi-res, but the larger multi-res, affordable housing. By the way, that BC Housing's SRO project, that was mine, that PPP. And that was actually a vanity project because they said they couldn't be done. The Deloitte said it couldn't be done. So we had to prove them wrong. So engineering firms, I just want to mention something around that. If you have a client and they have studies, we have paralysis by analysis in Canada. We love to do our studies, and people are throwing money around at different, we can all do studies. We got DRE money, they got DRE money. Hey, let's do another study. The intention, and that's why our partnership with Alberta Ecotrust, is to take the study and turn it into a project. Engineering firms want projects. They don't want more studies. They actually want to do stuff. What we do, and let's just take Calgary Airport, that project started off on the initial study at $22.5 million, self-funded. It's now just over $100 million, self-funded. So imagine what that did for the engineering firms that are connected to that project. Of course, they get paid more. The client gets more. They're getting, in that particular case, they're getting sort of almost like a citywide type solution at the Calgary Airport. So the actual satisfaction of tying in all those systems and making all those systems work, and I'm a bit like Beata. I have no idea what the technical stuff is, but they're touching everything, including renewables. So you want solar, you want geotherm. We've done a future roadmap. So what we're touching today, which is going to be self-financed for over the next 15 years, will operate and run out. They want to be net zero in 2050. So we've done them the roadmap. Everything we're putting in today facilitates that roadmap, but it also facilitates multiple options. If they want to go solar, they want to go hydrogen. What's the other one? There's something else anyway. 3 different options they can do, and they don't have to rip out the systems that are going in today. So when you're an engineering firm and you're involved in that kind of project, it's not, oh, we'll do the lighting this year because we've got some money, and next year we're going to do a bit of HVAC, and maybe we'll do some building controls. You do the whole lot. And the whole solution is way, way better than trying to pick it off bit by bit. I think I've talked about all of that anyway, especially the paralysis by analysis. We've got to move off that one. Fun with the owners. Okay, so, I forgot. I was asked to speak about what it is that we actually speak to the owners. So when you're actually speaking to the owners, it's about taking them to an outcome type based program. So it's not about, oh, we're going to do your lighting, and we'll get the cheapest price for your lighting, and then we're going to do your HVAC, and we'll do this. It's, what are we trying to achieve? 60%, 100%, net zero. If anybody says, by the way, they can get you to 100% net zero, they're lying. Our portfolio is running about 70%. It's we got a laptop, not a magic wand. But what we do is we guarantee that saving. So from a GHG point of view, from all the ESG type reporting, we take care of all the ESG reporting. We have to do it for lenders. We pass it over. We are finding the ESG at the C-suite is becoming more and more important as well. So at the C-suite, they're making promises that the poor people down below have to deliver. So we're delivering that. But when we're working with the likes of Morguard, Concert Properties, they have tenants, they have anchor tenants, Walmart, Canadian Tire. Actually, not Canadian Tire. They do have Canadian Tire, but they're not bothered about it so much. Lowe's, they're actually saying, if you want me in your building, I want a green lease, and I want to be able to report positive stuff around ESG. So they're putting pressure on the landlords. We're doing some big projects at the moment in Ottawa, and the tenant is the federal. the federal government, and they are saying, sort these out, and they've got like 1 or 2 years to sort this out. So we're doing, in fact, next week I'm in Ottawa just for that. So that's really important, and don't lose sight of that, because that is becoming more and more important. Lenders and insurers, so Marsh Insurance, the big lenders, they're all putting pressure on that ESG. They're actually evaluating that when people want to borrow money. Speaking the client's language, so Hudson Bay, they wanted to know in retail terms, what was the benefits to them? In a REIT, they want to know what the ROI is. So make sure it's resonating with them so that the message is tailored. I hate to say it, but a lot of people out there don't give a shit whether it's GHG or not. They just want money savings. They want energy savings. So you emphasize the energy savings. Oh, and by the way, we're doing all the GHG. And did you know GHG? You want money saving back in your pocket? How much are you paying in carbon tax? University of Calgary is paying $2 million a year today. Anybody from the University of Calgary here? Oh, I thought SAIT. I thought you'd have had them on. Okay, so University of Calgary, $2 million. By 2030, it's going to be $15 million in carbon tax alone, straight down the drain. Goes back into somebody else's pocket to redistribute somewhere else. So when you are actually trying to relate it back to a GHG, but they're only concerned about money, that's how you relate it back. Find the inside champion. Otherwise, you're just bashing your head against a wall all the time. If you've got somebody that's push internally and nattering on at the C-suite, God, they're worth their weight in gold. Same for the advisor firms. If you have a trusted advisor, we will release money through the project back to the client to pay for the advisory services. So the client really has no upfront money, but actually it's self-serving. We do that because if they have an independent trusted advisor working for them, we're not paying it, we're actually paying it to the client to pay for them, then they are advising the client on whether this is a good or a bad thing, which of course is always a good thing because it's us. But if you are actually have those advisors in there, worth their weight in gold. Oh, and learn, and this probably applies mostly to public sector, know when they're just wasting your time and just going round and round and round, the same old kicking the tires. And can you just ask, it's like death by 1,000 questions. So just know when to walk away. There is over, I think it was $50 billion of just in the private sector alone of work. So you don't need to spend months and months developing. Sorry. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. I'm Max Graham. I'm the COO of Avenue Living Communities, which is the residential arm of the Avenue Living group of companies. So I'll start off a little bit with like who we are, what we do, our approach. We'll go through our approach on energy retrofits, energy management, that sort of stuff. And then I've got 2 case studies, one here in Calgary and then one in Edmonton, 2 different models for each of those. So we can walk through those. So this is our organization at a high level. Founded in 2006, we're just about $7 billion in assets under management across 3 different mandates in North America. The green dots are where we have multifamily properties. So that's our largest mandate. We own just about 19,000 apartments across the United States and Canada. 90% of those are in Canada, and half of our total, so about 8,000, 8,500 are between Edmonton and Calgary. So those are our 2 biggest hubs. The orange dots you see kind of scattered everywhere. That's mini mall self-storage. So that's our self-storage fund. They've got about 9 million square feet of storage space across North America. And then the blue dots are commercial, small commercial portfolio. And then we also own about 100,000 acres of farmland in Saskatchewan as well. So, so I guess 4 mandates. So that's us at a high level. Part of our guiding principles, and I'll get into it, is we're a signatory to the PRI, Principles of Responsible Investing. There's 6 principles. It's a UN-backed program. It's centered on ESG principles. And essentially, you're just making a commitment to make ESG priorities central to your business. So ESG priorities are factored into our investment decisions, our disclosure, the way we hire people, the way we invest money, all those sorts of things. And then we have to disclose back to PRI how we're living those principles. So deep energy retrofits, tons of great information on what they are. I guess a delineator, like really in a simple way to summarize it, is a deep energy retrofit is programmatic as opposed to typical, measure by measure retrofits. I think that's really the delineating difference. You can go on a percentage basis and say, okay, deep energy is 25%, 30% minimum. Above that is a deep energy retrofit. But really my view is like it's programmatic. You're doing lights, low flow, HVAC, maybe some windows, maybe some envelope, maybe some roofing, maybe some solar, all in a programmatic approach. That's kind of the delineator. So why? So this is our sort of approach in terms of our program. We've got about $150 million of direct investment from financing from the Canada Infrastructure Bank that we're executing right now on about a third of our Canadian portfolio. So we're going to touch about 5,500 doors across across Alberta and Saskatchewan. This is kind of the roadmap for us, or what I would recommend building owners to follow. And you kind of heard a little bit from our speakers today, but it's really important as a building owner to set your goals. Does this have a pointer on it too? Oh, hey, there we go. Like, why? Why are you doing this? Do you just want to match a financing option that's out there? Okay, great. Like that could be your goal. Do you want to move to net zero? That's a great goal. That's very definitive and will determine every operating decision you make from now until you hit that goal. Do you want to take advantage of grant money? Do you want to target things with a 5-year payback or 15% ROI, or you want to use your excess capital most effectively, or you want to manage water? Whatever it is, you have to define your goals before, as clearly as you can. You're going to iterate on them, but you have to do that before you go to, especially the consulting groups. And I'm sure the engineers in the room feel this, where clients are just like, we want to do something. And you're like, what? And they're like, I don't know, but we heard this financing. It's not helpful for anyone, right? Like you have to try to define that as early as possible to say, okay, we want to target for our high consuming buildings, a 50% reduction. Okay, perfect. You can work from that. From there, set measurable targets, right? So it can start as something abstract as like our utility bills are crazy and carbon tax sucks. Let's just manage that. And then boil down to, okay, well, there's some financing, this, this accelerator, which would have been amazing when we were standing up our program, is giving us some guidelines. Maybe 30% is a good place to start. Maybe I want to reduce my bills a certain amount, right? Set some measurable targets and then plan before the financing. So really, really prioritize like, what are you getting after? And then, and then the financing follows. I think a lot of the conversations that I hear, and I've been on a few of these panels, is like putting this first and then backing into all the other things. And it just doesn't work, because you have to kind of set your North Star first as a building owner and operator to say, no, my goals are this, and here's the way I'm going to get there, because there are options, right? We've heard from a couple of them today. BMO's got a program. There are grants. There are, the Deep Energy Retrofit Accelerator, right? So there's options to test feasibility and all that stuff. So there's probably more financing than there is like pursuit of financing right now, but it's really establishing that baseline first. We kind of did that. I would say this is like scar tissue a little bit. We were, very early with CIB, started talking to them. They helped us kind of form our goals. Had we done this first, it would have been, it would have saved us a ton of time and a ton of brain power with our consulting group. Like we've recast energy audits, like some of the energy audits 4 or 5 times, which is so painful, right? It's cringing. He's like, that's terrible. Yeah, you don't want to do that. But we did that because we didn't have a North Star when we got the first one. And we were iterating, in real time, as opposed to sitting back first and saying, this is what we want to do with as much clarity early on as possible. I'm very fortunate to have an energy management team. This is how we approach things. We've gotten more sophisticated over the last 4 years, 3.5 years of being on this. So analytics are a big part of our life. We have an internal analytical tool that we use that takes every single utility bill and then converts it into useful analytical information. We use that for our budgeting, forecasting, accruals, and then working out, even just baseline energy analysis of like, is this a water pig? Is this a gas pig? Is this an electrical pig? Whatever. From there, we look at our emissions. We look at what we can do before deep energy retrofits. So is submetering possible? Are there incentives out there? Like, ERA had a grant program to do solar. It was it was slow on the bureaucratic front, slow and kind of cumbersome. But in the end of it was a total slam dunk in a few projects. How can we manage our rates more effectively? And then how can we do even just more ad hoc work? So can we do some small scale water conservation or some electrical things? And then when you kind of set your deep energy retrofit goals, and we've got a basket of goods, like I said, about 5,500 units that we'll do, or we're in the process of doing, policy becomes very important. And so again, this is where you need to draw the line of how sophisticated you are as an operator and how sophisticated you want to be. Like SOFIAC will do a lot of that for you. If you want to go direct to a firm like CIB, you're going to have to get your research on your own. They're a lot of work. They're a lot of work. ISO ready status. We just got that. We were told ISO ready status would be like 40 hours of work. It was probably 200. So think of that, right? Those are real costs, even if they're just internal time. Because they're all requirements in some way for all these funds. And then doing the work and reporting back through it. So that's kind of our cycle. And we've had the fortune of becoming a lot more sophisticated in the last few years. But again, this still comes back to like North Star and where you want to be. So Dream as a firm, I don't know if anyone is here from Dream, they've set a firm goal to be net zero by 2035. So that guides every single investment decision that they make, right? And that's a very clear example. Most firms are not on that. That's a polar end of the scale. But man, does it make their decision making easy, right? We have one place that we're going. So trying to get there internally for your own recipe is very important. Okay, let's look at some case studies. This is a project that's underway in Edmonton. It's in just north side of downtown. So if you're looking out of the building, you can see on this exposure, that's the Rogers Center. And then like the Ice District and everything. So it's like literally 2 blocks from our site. This is a 12-story mid-rise concrete building, 179 units. We bought it in 2015. So there's a main floor commercial and then a second floor that was office. And, we bought it, probably wasn't in great shape. It was an older building, built in the early 70s, late 60s. Had some operational challenges, had some image challenges. We operated it for a few years, realized, look, this formula is not working. And so we started to look at alternatives. And what we settled on was a complete overhaul of the asset. I don't mean like down to studs, I mean down to concrete. So complete exterior wall renovations. We switched, we did a fuel switching on the unit heating and cooling. So we went to PTAC units for heating and cooling. The common areas are still heated with a gas boiler, but kind of mild fuel switching is pretty big. The exterior, which is actually all getting installed right now, is an active solar panel. So 90% of the exterior space is actively generating electricity. We've got the tallest, this is a ridiculous, our marketing team's very creative. We have the tallest solar panel mural in the world going up. I don't know how many solar panel murals there are in the world, but we have the tallest one going up on the north side of the building. It was done by a First Nations artist based out of Edmonton. So it features the 12 animals of the Chinese zodiac and the 7 animals of the Cree totem. The building is located at the confluence of Chinatown and the original one of the original sort of settlement sites. So it's kind of pays homage to the community. New windows, full HVAC, electrical, plumbing, everything. So this is far, right? This is like, I would say, next to a complete fuel switching, about as far as we would see a multifamily building go of our type. And so GHG reductions of 64%, which we're really excited about. So this renovation is actually completing. They're saying occupancy could be mid-January. So we're right on the tail end of it. There's the top 4 floors of units are done. And we actually converted the second floor, which used to be kind of office space, into amenity space. So we've got a gym, 2 lounges, golf simulator, and just some tenant amenities. The units are quite small. So this is meant to be a bit of a gathering space for the residents. So how was this financed? The discussion today is financing. This was financed through BMO with CIB on the back end through primarily on a construction financing deal. And then BMO will provide the takeout. Now, why do we go that road? We actually had this building in our core CIB agreement originally. We switched to BMO, which is still inevitably a CIB-backed loan, for the reason that it was a mixture between a renovation and a retrofit. And that delineator is huge. If you're doing a renovation in addition to your retrofit work, a lot of the typical retrofit financing tools are just tougher, because you've got this like mixed metaphor of I'm investing some value add dollars and some retrofit dollars, and the two aren't typically kind of connected, right? So that's where BMO was a great partner, because they took on the whole lot. So all of our in-suite work, our amenity space, all this sort of stuff as a single project. It made the flow for our construction manager, our costing, the loan draws, everything very streamlined. So yes, if you're doing a renovation and retrofit, I would highly recommend that path. Now we are in Calgary, so this is a complex we bought in 2022, Wildwood Apartments. So it's 330 apartments. It's a garden style site across about 15 acres in Calgary's southwest. So for anyone that you maybe might recognize, it's kind of a unique built form for Calgary. Corner of Southland and McLeod, there's that Walmart. We're right behind it. The Italian Center is a short drive. So 330 units. Previous owner was Morgard. No one's here from Morgard? Yeah? No? Okay. Won't change what I say. They were kind of, I think, waffling on what to do with this property, so they hadn't invested in it, right? So 11 boilers, 11 hot water tanks, 11 roofs, several hundred, almost 1,000 windows, all at end of life. The complex was built in the early 60s. It's a big inner city site, could very easily be a redevelopment site. We bought it. That's not our business model. Our business model is to buy and run. And so we looked at this and said, wow, what an opportunity to take good, non-combustible, great, it's a park-like setting, really well located. Let's make an investment in this community and bring up the systems to current modern day. So it's kind of good that they didn't really take an investment approach on the asset, because we were able to get it for a great price and allow us the room to do this. So 330 units, 11 buildings. Work has just started on this. So we have a tier 1 construction manager, Clark Builder, that's just mobilized in the last week. The reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, 53% on the site, which is great. And so what are we doing? We did the roof, all the roofs this summer. So we put on, it was a flat roof. They're all flat roofs. We put on an R48 roof. I don't know, the engineers in the room, do you know how like thick an R48 roof is? They're like comically thick. But I find that people do that in the retrofit world, right? Like brag about their roof thickness and their wall thickness, right? Like the wall library. How thick are the walls in the wall library? 18 inches. Right? Yeah. Every time I got 17-inch walls, I'm like, oh my God. So I guess I'm doing that now. I got an 18-inch roof. So we're doing the roof. We did the roofs. We're swapping the boilers to condensing boilers. Legislation requires it in the next 6 weeks anyway. We're replacing all the windows to triple glazed, and the patio doors as well. Upgrading the domestic hot water to a condensing system, and then adding BMS, pipe insulation, and low flow fixtures. So pretty substantial overhaul. No work to the envelope. It's cinder block and then brick veneer, which actually we found through our audits, and we've done several dozen now. It's actually a really high performing envelope. So it's tough to do better. If you tear that off and then put something back on, you're typically going, speaking of Walt, it's going to cost you a lot to even get back there. So no other intervention with the walls. But it's a big site. The budget is about, including the roof, about 18 million. So across 330 doors is a substantial investment, but that's our business model, right? So our goals is to run workforce housing, which is people earning between $15 and $50 an hour across North America and as affordable communities as we can provide. Now we're a market housing provider, but to be able to take a product like this, 60 years old and make an investment to make it, stay great for another 60 years, that's our business model, right? And so that drove the investment decision. So really exciting. If you're driving around town, it's underway right now. Yeah. So those are two different business models. Sorry, I should touch on the financing. So this is financed through our core CIB project. No value add work in this, right? We're not doing common areas. We're not doing any unit renovations. We're not upgrading the gym. There is a gym on site. So it fits really well with the core program. The core CIB program incentivizes you to save emissions. So 30% minimum. If you save 30%, you're on the high end of their rate scale, and then scales down progressively towards 50%. 50% that savings maximizes, and that's when you get the highest benefit of their low rate financing. So really, if you're going to take on CIB work, now CIB is not going to look at you if you have less than 60 or 70 million dollars worth of work. So you got to look at, okay, do I have that? And I would say, having been through several channels now, you have to be quite sophisticated to work directly with CIB because of the requirements. You need a big, scope in terms of project size, and an ability to get certified, an ability to work through fairly complex energy things that a lot of owners just don't have. So just something to keep in mind. But when you do, very preferential financing. That's what I had.
Great. Thank you very much, Max. That was awesome. I say we address maybe the first panel discussion we had. Let's have all three. We have 3 microphones. This was the first question that we had. What are some potential concerns in the minds of building owners when considering these innovative financing models?
Well, from the perspective of a building owner, which is a great question, I think it's just depth of knowledge, right? Like you have to be a pretty big operator to have an energy team or a capital team that has the skills to understand like what is a deep energy retrofit and then how to model it, like how to model an ROI, how to set the return metrics. Like that takes a fairly sophisticated team. So I'd say that's probably the biggest hurdle for my view. I don't know. I'm sure you guys interact with more building owners, but.
Yeah, I think from my perspective is I feel sorry for building owners because there is so much confusion out there. There's as Max was saying, there's actually funding or financing. Everybody a few years ago was saying, oh, there's not enough financing or there's not enough people to do the work. Actually, that's rubbish. There's so much money out there ready to spend, and it's very, very difficult for an owner to select which is the best one for them, which gives them the best value for money. And they don't even know. I mean, I've had a couple of conversations already, and it's like, I've never heard of SOFIAC. Probably never heard of you guys as well. It's just, it's word of mouth. And, you go on the CIB, if you go for the CIB, it's his 8 different aggregators. You're an aggregator because you borrow money from but you're not an aggregator. You're not going to do somebody else's. So how does a client pick? And then, so what do? They turn to the advisors. So they then spend a whole load of money on advisory services to try and get that selected down. But often the advisors don't know all about the mechanisms. Red Deer Poly, they've just cancelled their last procurement. So that's the second or third. We both competed on the original RFI 2 years ago, and they just cancelled the latest because they got a consultant in. They didn't want energy as a service, but they put out a procurement for energy as a service. And then they had a whole bunch of things in there that was SOFIAC specific only. And it just So obviously all the responses came back and it went, oh, I don't understand. Cancel. Go round the round again. Sorry, Beata.
So as far as the small and medium-sized market is concerned, they tend to not have that kind of capacity in-house. So when they're speaking to us, one of their biggest concerns or questions about our model is, what's the catch? Because this is too good to be true. We provide the technical expertise. We provide the finance expertise. We provide the asset management / finance expertise. So we have all of that in-house that building owners can take advantage of. So they just don't know how to interpret that, once we get to actually speak to them. One of the other questions that we often get is, are there any upfront costs? And there aren't. In terms of how we work, we can invest up to 100%. They ask things like, do we have to choose the technology that you are recommending? So I think I was having a conversation earlier. Our Bible is that executive summary in the investment grade audit. I couldn't care less about the rest of the other 90 pages, truth be told. I look at that executive summary, and that's what our agreements are based on. That's how we develop the business case for a building owner. And all of those costs, and all of the related costs are amortized into the agreement. And in terms of selecting the technology, we work closely with the building owner to develop that business case, whether it's a paid from savings approach or whether it's a pay for performance approach. We work with them really closely on that, and they absolutely do not have to stick to whatever's in that initial audit. They could maybe just pick a few measures out of there. To your point about shower heads, there's actually very, very good low flow shower heads out there. Just saying, I have one. I like a good shower head too. So we would never foist a crappy shower head on one of our clients. And then I guess one of the last concerns that we often have, and so I work a lot with multi-unit residential / condos, and there's a lot of concern about the impact on the individual owners. So typically if you're doing a special assessment, that's one thing. If you're doing a loan through the corporation, there could be strings attached. With our model, and I'm assuming SOFIAC's model as well, there's no lien on the building. So it's off balance sheet, and there is absolutely no lien on the corporation. So it has no impact on owners either refinancing, remortgaging, or selling their suites.
Okay.
Actually, I have a question for Max, if I can.
Sure.
So actually something that Beata mentioned then that jogged my mind, lack of control. I think a lot of clients feel that it's going to be they're going to have a lack of control and decision making.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think from your side?
Yeah, we were on the other end of that. We had to make the recipe and the cake all at the same time. If I was to go back through from day one, probably wouldn't craft a direct relationship with CIB because it just requires a lot of sophistication. You have to, little things, right? You get your energy audit drawn up with a solar array on it, and that's not buildable at all, right? You have to use the solar consultant to actually do that, right? So it's just you have to learn all that when you're doing this yourself. Whereas with an aggregator, you will give up some control, but in a lot of cases, it's you're controlling things that you might not know about. You know what I mean? So it's probably fine. I don't know, would be my
The
view.
shit that happens behind the scenes that you don't want to worry about.
Yeah, it takes so long to figure out. It takes a long time to figure out. ASHRAE, is anybody an energy auditor? ASHRAE level 1, 2, 3, right? So if you're a building owner, you don't know what any of that means. And then you go get a level 2 audit, and then you're like, I want to go get MLI financing. And they're like, you need level 3. So we need to redraft that audit, and it's going to cost you triple. And you're like, I wish someone told me that the first time, so I didn't do a level 2 audit, right? But again, I come back to the goals. Set your goals early, because if I had gone to that consultant and said, I'm trying for MLI select financing, they would have been able to be a better partner, right? Say, you need a level 3 audit.
And that measurement side, so the CIB, but regardless of whether it's CIB or us, you still want to measure success, don't you? And who knows about IPMVP, the international protocol? Yeah.
I forced Kish. Sorry, I'm calling out Kish. Kish is on our team. Kish is IPMVP certified now. So we hired a
Is that through SAIT?
MMV expert.
Our sister organization. Was it?
You are
We get you eventually.
Maybe 1 of 5 in Calgary. I don't know, right? But that's a requirement we own now. Like we'll have MMV on 90 properties for the next 20 years. That's the outcome of a direct relationship. So we signed up for that, right? I'm not complaining. I'm just saying that's something that you don't think about when you pencil that deal. You go, okay, now I have this burden, right? Whereas with other providers, perhaps SOFIAC, it's going to be different. Yeah.
Great. Before I move on to another, there's another question set up, but does anybody have a question from the audience? We'll kind of blend it right now. It's in specific to what they've answered.
I guess
Yes.
it's kind of building on this, and maybe it's the exact same question.
Talk loud. There are microphones in the ceiling, so talk loud.
Just yell at everybody.
Yeah, you touched on that. Yeah, that there's all this financing available, but no one's really reaching out. And that was my initial question, is like, if people are thinking maybe it's too good to be true, but what do you see is kind of those major barriers? Why aren't people reaching out to you? Or is it just kind of like a marketing thing, or just getting the word out? Or what are those barriers for financing on your end?
I think we're unicorns. People think we're magical. Yeah, I think people just can't wrap their heads. And so I spend a lot of time educating. So first of all, there's a lack of knowledge about energy efficiency, period. I have been talking about energy efficiency for the past 20 years. We've come a long way, but sadly not very far. So there's that piece. I think the deep energy retrofit approach, once you get past that hurdle, understanding that the best, even if you take us out of the equation, the best net present value, the best investment, the best everything comes from deep energy retrofits, not by picking off measure by measure. And then, we have in-house expertise of all different kinds, plus we have money. We have more money. So we're not just a CIB aggregator because we have other pools of capital. We have more money than we know what to do with. So please bring us some budget. But there's like that whole education piece that has to happen. So the best success that I've had, and I'm sure Stuart will say the same thing, is that when people come to us with need, if their boiler is just about to blow up, or they have some burning platform that they have to address, then they're motivated to move. Otherwise, it's, this is where Alberta Ecotrust comes in, because they're able to do all that hand holding that we normally do as part of the business development process, because there's just so much education that needs to be done. So you guys can fulfill some of those, get us past some of those hurdles, because you're kind of already doing that.
I think from our part is the name. I mean, we've only been running, nobody gives a monkeys what actually really happens just in Quebec. So really for the rest of Canada, we've only been running for like 2 and a bit years. So first off, I really resonate. I used to actually have it in my book, and there'd be a point in the conversation with a client, and it's, I know what you're about to say, and I would hold it up and it says, seems too good to be true. Well, hang on, you were going to pay for it all and we're going to own it, but if there's nothing happening, we don't pay you. That can't be right. Well, now, you know, IBM and airports and a lot of people, that's an easier conversation than it was 2 years ago when it was, hey, trust me. You know, oh yeah, right. But I do think back to that point, there's one, people aren't aware that if you were in your own house and you want to buy a car or you want to buy something for your house, I do it myself. The first thing you think of is, oh, I'll go to the bank and I'll borrow some money. Or if it's a car, I'll compare the finance from the car, meet people with the bank. I don't think, is there another way of doing this? And I wouldn't necessarily go to, you know, lease to purchase or something like that. But, you know, obviously that is an alternative in the car world. In the retrofit world, there's way more options. And it becomes almost like information overload. So, you know, when it blows your mind, you just go straight back to, what do I know? Oh, well, let's just go and get some money. Our conversation is way more successful when it's with the COO or the CFO. It's not a technical solution. The technical solution is the easy part. That's what spits out at the other end. But when we have to work our way up through estates management, oh God, that's just take forever. Get in at the COO, it's a business decision. They do an evaluation, they might compare us with their own design, bid, build, and then suddenly, okay, it's one or the other. Between us, we got 600 million at the moment. I mean, our new fund is going to launch next year and it's going to go from half a billion to $1 billion. It may or may not involve the CIB because, to be honest, as Max is saying, they're a pain in the ass. All those requirements that we take care of in the background, we actually have an entire team like you that just sorts that out, whether it's Hatch, due diligence, it's Marsh, insurance, CAGBC, certification, all of that, client doesn't have to worry about. It takes place in the background. So if we can get rid of some of that and just make the project so much easier, makes it cheaper as well. It's like 3.5–4% on the CapEx just for that process, which when you think I'm getting 1% debt from the CIB, well, now I'm actually putting it all back on again because I've got to put it back on for their fees. So it's just in a different way. So we don't need their money for the future. It was very, very good because we use the CIB name just unashamedly to actually open the doors in the first place, because for some reason it's, oh, Canada Infrastructure Bank. Yay, that's great. It's a program. And we love programs in Canada, don't we? So it's a program that opens the door and then we walk in and I say, oh, well, what's your relationship? Oh, yeah, we're aggregated at the CIB. We'll do this. And it's almost like there's a first trust point.
It's a calling card, right? Because you can say we're Government of Canada approved.
Yeah. And NOCAN as well.
Do you have anything to add to that, Max? No? Okay, I saw another hand go up.
This is just augment to your question. Stuart, you mentioned that RDP for the third time has backed away. They've got a ton of education from Honeywell and Johnson and yourself. With all of that education, they're still not moving forward. I don't want to pick on RDP, but is there something common there that you see in other clients as well that's preventing them from taking the decision?
Yeah, with RDP and other public sector, it's procurement. It's their internal procurement department that keeps fouling things up. Same with City of Calgary. We had, they're doing their next round of consultations. And there's somebody from environment, somebody from, I don't know, estates or something like that. There's a few people. They had 2 people from procurement in the room. I mean, talk about giving the wrong message. And with RDP, the problem is actually back to Max's point. They don't know what their North Star is. They haven't really defined other than we want to get to net zero and we want to save some money, save energy. But I don't think, and I actually wrote your point down there because I'm going to use this tomorrow, is, thank you. They haven't set their North Star. They did an RFI originally, which we won. So, okay, fine, we got a project, we're going forward. And then, funnily enough, you mentioned Honeywell. Honeywell went in there and screwed the pooch, confused the hell out of them, and said, oh, there's energy performance contracting, you should look at that, and you should look at this. And suddenly their CFO went, oh, back to that point, I don't know what to do, I'm so confused. So they went and employed P1 Consulting, who weren't much better, it turns out, and thought, out of all of this, let's do energy as a service. But you want to own the equipment. That's not energy as a service. Oh, well, we didn't think about that. What are you going to do? Well, is it off balance sheet? Is it, going to affect my debt? Did you think about that? No. Hence, procurement cancelled again yesterday. So there's too much confusion, bad advisors, and no North Star.
And I would add governance issues in terms of policy.
Let's try to do one more. If you have to leave, by all means, and we understand. But let's do one more question here. So, and you may have already kind of touched on this in some of your answers. So if we have, we can move on. What strategies have been effective? And I think, yeah, you kind of like a lot of education. What strategies have been effective in helping building owners and stakeholders learn about the benefits of these innovative finance models, especially when they're accustomed to traditional methods? So.
Well, I would say a comparison to traditional methods. So if you take out a loan, that loan is only good for 5 to 10 years. If you contract with us, you have an amount that's fixed for the next 25 years, if that's how long the contract lasts for. So that's a significant eye opener for building owners, something to think about just in terms of long range planning that provides a lot of confidence that they normally wouldn't have. So that's one piece, and I have other points, but I'll pass it over to you.
Yeah, I'll go first. And I think correct. I agree. And then the other part is getting the actual proper decision makers at the table. We use this great little carrot, which is basically we do the business case, which is sort of an ASHRAE 1, and we do a financial model business case that sits alongside it, and we do it for free at our risk, our cost. Who can say no to that? When we have the numbers in front of them and the art of the possible in terms of the technical solution, our conversion rate is probably about 80 to 85%. But getting past that point is the difficult part. To that point is the difficult part. Even when the study's free, it's like, what's the catch? Why are you doing this for free? Hey, well, because we want you to do a flaming project, don't we? So that's the catch, is we do it for our risk. You don't have to go forward if you don't like it, but just take a free business case. And don't give us Alberta University, oh, well, here's a library. Well, the library, it's not even $1 million. It was like, well, just give us your campus. We'll do the whole campus for free. Yeah, but we only really want you to look at the library for now and we'll test it. Go away. Thanks very much. No, don't waste our time. What about you, Max?
Yeah, I'd say trying to dial in your formula as soon as you can. Like once you set your goals, and we went through this on energy audits, why I say we recast some audits 4 or 5 times, because you get these distractions that just are unhelpful when it comes to actually doing work, right? Like someone says, hey, like you should try that Wildwood site. You should put geothermal there and just do like a complete fuel switching. And we're like, yeah, tons of land. Let's do it. We did feasibility geothermal, cost us a bunch of dough, took 5 months. It's completely unfeasible. Like it's like an 150-year payback. We did that one time, right? But if you're running all of these sort of like novel things, every project, you have a lot of buildings, like, we have several hundred buildings, like you're just not going to get work done. You just flat out will not move things forward. So like set your goals, dial into the formula, and then just start doing it. And it means making hard decisions. Like we're not going to do roofs. We're going to do a few, but beyond that, we're not going to do any roofs, or we're not going to look at geothermal, or we're not going to look at, if I don't have a boiler of a certain size, I'm not looking at massive BAS steps. But you have to make those decisions, because like that's part of the what people get stuck on, right? They want to do everything, but it's you either do something, cut emissions, or you don't. But the dream to do more and not do anything, like, doesn't mean anything, right? So.
Okay, I'm gonna push the envelope. Let's get one more in here. With innovative financing structures often involving risk sharing, how do you address concerns related to underperformance of energy savings or unexpected project challenges? So I thought that was a good one to end on.
Okay, I'll go first. This one's an easy one for us because we take on this risk. So at each stage of the project, whatever we've promised, if we don't hit, so if I say a business case stage, we're going to hit 30% energy savings and GHG. And then when we get into ASHRAE 2 and 3 and full design, if I drop below any of the previous level promises, the client keeps all the collateral and walks away for free. So another one of too good to be true. But we take on that performance risk because we have a formula of shared savings. So very, very quickly, the way that works, the client appoints an independent third party to do the measurement and verification whilst the project is in operation. And that's where it comes back to if we have not saved any money as determined by the independent third party, then the client pays us nothing. If we save them $100, they pay us $85 and they keep 15 as a positive cash flow. Save them 10 million, pay us pay us 8.5, keep 1.5. And so it goes on. If it underperforms, though, we're going to be out of pocket. We don't like to be out of pocket. We've got lenders. Hopefully I'm retired by the time it gets to the 15 or so years and it becomes a problem for them. But we actually start to forecast that because we measure monthly throughout the project. So what we do is we lean on the technical partner, the constructor, the ESCO, whatever that might you want to call it. So we'll lean on them. They have a rectification period, get in there and sort it. And if they don't, they start paying us what the client should have paid us. So they start to hurt. And that's a real big incentivization to actually do something properly.
Yeah, that's very powerful. So to that previous point I was making about the education piece, building owners, when they're looking at the traditional routes and they're looking at taking out a loan, they're going to pay that loan, whether that equipment's going to perform or not, whether the savings are going to be realized or not. If the equipment breaks down, SOL. We completely de-risk the project. So we have multiple products. We have a guaranteed savings approach similar to SOFIAC. But in addition to the guaranteed savings, we also take the technical risk. So with the energy upgrade agreement, we are taking design risk, we're taking the technical risk, and the financial performance risk. So all of that has now been completely de-risked for the building owner. All they have to worry about is for those cash flows to materialize. And they don't have to worry because we've done that, really close analysis. And we're pretty sure, unless there's a piece of equipment that's a lemon, that those savings are going to materialize. If that equipment is a lemon, we take it back and we swap it out. So there's absolutely really no risk on their part at the end of the day once we've engaged with them.
How about Avenue? Because you guys have assumed the risk, particularly to the CIB, because if you drop below a certain percentage, then your interest rate goes up, doesn't it?
Then it moves. Yeah. And it's a loan. It's not grant funding, so we have to pay it back. I think a few things, not all ECMs are equal. There's some that are more proven and measurable and good than others. Additives, not the greatest. Low flow, you tried and tested in terms of measurability. So I think not all ECMs are equal. Same thing with your measures within the ECMs. Certain product types are just more reliable than others. So you have to lean on that. When we slice and dice this from a model perspective, we do about half a dozen different ways: deferred maintenance way, cash flow way. If we were to do this work and not do it on an energy profile, and so we kind of de-risk ourselves internally to say, well, if this doesn't pan out and I don't save 45%, but I save 35, am I still happy with that? If carbon tax gets axed, are we still happy with that? Are we still, so we kind of internally calibrate many different ways. And then we do it.
So you run sensitivities on different outcomes for the models and inflation factors.
Every way.
Yeah, I guess probably we do that as well. Well, I know we do, but yeah, we do the same.
And sometimes you go, okay, the equipment's cooked anyway. So I'm going to, you know, it's end of life anyway. I'm going to save some emissions, or I'm not going to save as much, or I may, but I need to make a decision here. Like I have to do something. So let's do it in a programmatic way. Let's target a deep energy profile and improve the, you know, resident quality and, you know, functioning of the building, the maintenance profile. That's enough.
Any other questions from the audience? We have them here. They traveled. Max is local, but others traveled here.
I have one again.
Okay.
From the consultant's point of view, I guess, I mean, that we SPG's worked with all of you actually, but I just wanted to hear your perspective. If you receive any, I guess, friction or pushback from consultants, because it seems like a little bit of that risk gets put onto them, of course, because they're, again, required to have these really stringent energy audits. Maybe they're used to doing, you know, we'll do a level 2, but now we have to really mean what we say, because you're going to be using those values and taking on that risk with yourself, and maybe sharing a bit of that risk with the consultant. So just wondering your perspective of working with different consultants on that.
Well, I think all three of us probably work slightly differently with the consultants. So from our side, it depends if you want to be client side or if you want to be constructor side, and whatever you choose, that's what happens. So we don't force you to do either. If you stay client side, great. We release money, helps advise client, brilliant. And you don't take any of that responsibility. You might be part of the ASHRAE 1 upfront study. If we start to move down the actual, we call it the investment grade audit, but ASHRAE 3+ in terms of the design development side, what we would do is you choose as the advisor which contractor you want to work with. Do you want to form a strategic relationship? Do you already have a good relationship? But they are responsible for the guarantee to us, not you. But they might try and push some of that down to you. I don't know any advisors, though, that actually take on that risk. So Stantec, you guys, Black and Mac, none of you actually take on the risk. So I'd say there is no risk, and they have to use you guys to do this, to do the project, because you came with the project. It's like you don't have a project unless you use these guys. So in our case, you're pretty risk-free. I mean, you still got to do your job, you still got to do a design, and you still got to stand behind it, but you're not guaranteeing it. They have to do the due diligence on your work and guarantee it to us.
Well, you already know the answer. I mean, our contracts are based on that, on the audit. I mean, really, that's our Bible. And I guess the degree of risk for the consulting firm is, I mean, it's an investment grade audit, so it's typically plus 10% in terms of buffer for error. But typically the consulting firm would not, or whoever the GC is, I guess, would not take on that project risk. It would remain at the audit level. Where there's bigger risk is when the engineering firm engages with us in an energy savings performance agreement, because it's the engineering firm's insurance policy that backstops our guarantee. And, you know, we have very few firms where we're doing that with, where, you know, the firms have developed an approach to de-risk the project for themselves. You know, and it's once you have the formula down, it's really, it's not an issue. But there is like that growing pain of engineering firms really getting on board with our requirements for accuracy, because we like to honor what we, you know, even if the savings aren't guaranteed, when we provide clients with projected cash flows, we like to not give them any surprises down the road. And to Stuart's point, our, our rates, if we're using our cheapest pool of funds, which is CIB, then we really need to maintain those greenhouse gas emission reductions.
Actually, could I just add something else? I'm sorry, just before only because it feeds off that, is actually the other thing is you're in control. So as long as we're over 30%, because that's what CIB requires, if you think it's 60% savings and you tell us 50% savings, we don't give a shit. That's your hedge. That's your self-insurance, as it were, on that. I mean, you're an engineer, you should know what you're designing, but as long as there's still a project there, it just means there's obviously a less of a project. So you're going to balance, hang on, I want to do a bigger project and I want to get more fees. So how much should I hedge versus your risk tolerance internally? But it's up to you. You decide that. Tell us what it is. We feed it all into the model, spits out an answer. Off we go. Client likes it or doesn't. So that's the other thing. Sorry.
Yeah, I think just trying to, when you're putting the audits together, think beyond the audit and to constructability and financing and, just remembering that audit is like kind of a keystone for financing rates, M&V afterwards, selection of ECMs. So thinking beyond that and then to constructability is really important. Like I bring up the example of the solar array because it just pissed me off so much. I was like, why did we pay for this? I don't know if it was your SPG. I don't know if it was you guys, but anyway, it was somebody. I won't name names. But we literally got this draft array on a roof and then you go on the roof and you're like, the array overlaps with like 15 vents. It's completely unconstructable. And you're like, well, why did I pay for this? Right? Like the returns on this will never materialize. So that's just an example, but thinking beyond just that perhaps exercise to, okay, someone's going to hopefully take this and like make it happen. That's really where the value from the audit comes, because then if we've got to go back and recast and say, well, the array was like unusable, so we had to get that and we got to, and it's all those things are cascading. That's where, and you do have risk. The risk is you get turfed, right? Ultimately. So, you want to keep working, right?
Excellent point.
Yeah.
Adding that, the constructability piece is big.
Yeah. So the risk is we don't use you again, right? Or whoever doesn't use you again. But I say that's the biggest thing is if you can take that audit and then it's informing all my next steps and it's a keystone, it's not an impediment. That's great. Yeah.
Okay, I think with that, we're going to close it out. But with that, on behalf of Alberta Ecotrust and SAIT GP TAC, I want to thank our guest speakers and attendees and all you guys. So thank you very much. Let's keep moving the dial here on retrofits.